Good evening, everybody. My name is Mitra Memori, and as a partner at ZGF and the 2022 president of AIA Los Angeles, I welcome you all to the series of forums that we are leading for the Los Angeles mayoral candidates. Tonight, we're delighted to have Los Angeles City Council member Joe Buscaino. Sorry, I hope I got that right.
Buscaino, just like a blue sky.
Buscaino,
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Buscaino. So our overarching objective of this series is to help influence the campaign narrative of the mayoral candidates and to inform the scope, impact, and priorities that we all agree deserve our immediate attention. We'd also like to leverage AIALA's leadership role representing the regional architecture and design community and to better understand each candidate's core values as they relate to creating and maintaining a healthy, equitable, and vibrant city, a city that works for everyone. The themes that we will be discussing tonight are the issues that reflect the mission and vision of AIA Los Angeles: climate action, environmental justice, and the built environment, homelessness and housing affordability and access, leadership, the city charter, and a streamlined development, as well as the vision and architectural beauty. We are delighted to have Frances Anderton as a moderator tonight. She is currently serving alongside me on the AIALA board as a director and brings to her role a moderator, a broad and deep understanding of design in Los Angeles. Currently, Frances is writing a book, Common Ground, Multifamily Housing in Los Angeles, and also programs, talks, exhibitions, and events at Helms Bakery District. You may recognize her name and likely her voice for years of hosting the KCRW's DNA Design and Architecture radio show. Welcome, Frances. I'm handing this off to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Mitra, and it's great to see you all and to see you, Councilman.
You, Frances.
Yeah, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
I've actually met you, I think, on maybe more than one occasion at a couple of things down in San Pedro. But thank you so much for pivoting and doing the Zoom call. I know one of the goals of these events was to actually meet you in person, and that would have been great. But thank you for being so accommodating so quickly. So I think the way we'll do this is I'll ask you some questions for about 20 to 30 minutes, if that's okay, and then we're going to throw it open to the floor. My architecture peers out there know the legislation pertaining to the built environment up and down, so they will have some challenging questions, and I don't want to poach on their time. But first of all, let's introduce you properly for anyone not familiar with your track record. Let's start by saying that you represent and have lived in the 15th district your entire life.
Yes.
You're a first generation Italian American, wonderful country. Your parents emigrated from Italy over 40 years ago in pursuit of the American dream. Prior to your election to the city council, you served for 15 years as a police officer in the LAPD. You got very high marks at college, and you've amassed all sorts of other great achievements, but you're currently president pro tempore of the Los Angeles City Council. Your district includes the communities of Harbor City, Harbor Gateway, San Pedro, Watts, and Wilmington, as well as the enormous port of Los Angeles. You've served on the City Council since 2012. You've served as the chair of the city's Trade, Travel and Tourism Committee since 2017, and that committee oversees the Port of Los Angeles, the busiest container port in the US. I think those are some of the main aspects of your bio that we should hit, but you're welcome to mention some of the others, but let's, if you're okay with it, dive straight into the conversation.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Sure.
Yeah. And actually, before we get onto the tough questions, I'm just going to ask you the softball question, and it plays right into your role as the Trade, Travel and Tourism Committee guy, which is tell a bunch of architects, that is people who are really interested in the built environment, why you should be their mayor.
Well, I'm running for mayor of Los Angeles to restore our quality of life. I'm the only candidate that has the lived experience on the street level. I've seen poverty at its worst as a first responder with LAPD for many, many years. I've seen the homelessness crisis worsen. We've seen in the course of these last several years a spike in crime, to the point when my own family and friends turn to me and say, Joe, we should consider leaving Los Angeles. It's painful. I'm giving up my last term. I could have easily done 4 more years as a council member representing the 15th district, but I have seen and heard enough. My goal in running for mayor is to treat this crisis the same way I treated 911 calls, with urgency, as if I'm responding to an emergency call. And lastly, and then I'll get to your questions, is being an effective local elected leader based on my contributions, proven leadership, proven to get things done instead of talking about plans and grand plans and promises, which I can't wait to get into exactly what we've done in my district from Watts to San Pedro to help improve the quality of life, but more needs to be done. And that's why I'm running for mayor, to be its chief executive officer. And we need a mayor that has that mind frame and comes with the lens of public safety and lead with urgency.
Public safety, definitely very important. We'll get more into that, I'm sure. But still, vision. Again, quickly, we have a group of people here who are still extremely positive about Los Angeles. We're going to dig into the problems momentarily, but they're positive about Los Angeles. They see it as a place that embodies ideas and optimism and ambition, at the same time as it's got a lot of challenges, and that ambition gets manifested in buildings and in ambitious infrastructure and in beautiful landscaping and in the good stuff. Just speak to that, and then we'll get into solving the massive crisis of homelessness.
Well, I've come from a household of visionaries. My wife is a teacher, a professional in her professional life, but was also an interior designer. She's passionate about and the work that she's done here on her personal side. And I have a son, my son, 18-year-old son, is at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, was accepted as an architect student there, an architect object student now, working on fashion. And it's how we build the city. I've actually been a student of what's taken place in Chicago, how this downtown Chicago is an architectural gem. And there's been points in time as a council member these last 10 years of approving a community update plan that is resembles the current character, I should say, of our beloved downtown San Pedro. We've been able to advance and protect what the city looks like here in the downtown San Pedro area, not only with housing, but also with both the Wilmington and San Pedro waterfronts that are taking shape today. Recognizing that we live in an industrial port, and when we have used the professionals to come in and bring in, say, for example, Gensler, and I am working with the professionals who actually understand the importance of preserving the character of the city, and something that what we've learned to do, especially when we advanced on our outdoor dining platforms and using professionals to help design the outdoor dining platforms, using architects that helped design the LA waterfront. Folks wanted to put a Bellagio style development along the waterfront. And we push back against that. And this is what as mayor, we need to continue to not only keep the character of our town in our city, but do so in a way that recognizes your work and uses your expertise. I mean, we've used LA Moss on the On Avalon initiative. And of course, City Fabrics with the design of our outdoor dining platform, and the Gensler's urban awning project. We've used Gensler to design our new piazza in downtown San Pedro. LA Moss, who helped design our town square that today is the epicenter of everything, all art, culture, and entertainment along the Wilmington corridor on Avalon. So it's, you know, these visionary projects that we need to embrace, but also use the skill set and the knowledge of folks like you.
Right. But were you to become mayor and you're selling LA to the rest of the world, how are you going to sell it?
Yeah.
How are you going to describe it?
I'm mindful that my immigrant mom and dad, they came to this city for opportunities. The water line brought prosperity to the city. And we are a city that is a model of the United Nations. The people of the city of Los Angeles make who we are today. And we come from all walks of life. The skill set, we dreamers, creative side of the people that live here and work here. And that is, you know, we are Hollywood. We are, if you go to any part of the city of Los Angeles, you're welcome, like the same city that's welcomed my immigrant family.
Sure. Many of us are immigrants. Okay. So let's get on to what you're running on. You're running, like many of your, I guess, rivals for this position, you're running on cleaning up the streets and somehow solving or alleviating the terrible levels of homelessness that we have. Currently, I think the numbers are 60,000 around unhoused people. The current mayor has unfortunately, those numbers have barely had a bite taken out of them during his tenure. We all know that the mayoral position is not quite as powerful as, say, the mayor of, say, Chicago, which you mentioned. So what are you going to do? How are you going to solve this problem?
Well, again, as I'm talking to the voters in all corners of the city of Los Angeles, I'm encouraging them to look at and rate each candidate based on his or her actions on homelessness and crime. I'm proud of the work that we've done in my district. We've housed nearly half of the people who are living on sidewalks, and we've said yes to all types of housing, from permanent supportive housing to shelters, to interim housing, of course, tiny home village, all the way to market rate workforce housing. And we have said that in our district, and I believe the rest of the city as mayor, I'm going to push for immediate housing now as we're building out permanent supportive housing. That's the model to follow. We should also recognize the fact that we've seen folks anchor themselves to the sidewalk because of drug addiction issues, mental health problems, and recognizing the fact that we alone as a city need to compel the county to increase the capacity of their mental health, drug addiction resources, and encourages the state and federal government to do their part as well. In fact, if you come to my district, you will not see large, dangerous encampments because we made a commitment to this community who, from Watts all the way down to San Pedro, is that we said yes to solutions. We've also held everyone accountable for not moving in and not allow folks to destroy themselves and self-destruct on the streets. I've found that we've been a city that's been enabling drug addiction by not having consequences on our streets. That's not compassionate to allow folks to just remain on the sidewalk while they're waiting for a bed. In fact, tonight, unfortunately, there will be hundreds of beds available, yet we'll have people on the streets. So that is my vision for addressing the homelessness issue in all corners of the city. We will build 9,000 emergency beds within the first year to get the functional zero on chronic homelessness, but also at the same time have a no camping law citywide, so that when a bed will abide by the court ruling, that when a bed is available, the sidewalk's not an option.
So what you're just referring to, this holding folks accountable, you mean holding folks on the streets who resist moving into available shelter. And I believe that's a sort of a piece of this ballot measure that you are that you've put forward, the Safer Streets LA ballot measure, and that law enforcement aspect of it seems to be quite a strong component, and has also elicited criticism from some quarters who say that you're not going to be solving the problem in any innovative way. You're just going to be using law enforcement to ticket people, and these are people who are at their most vulnerable. So what do you say to people that criticize that approach?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Frances. It's a false narrative. In fact, we have been very successful in my district without arresting a soul. We've also, what we have found, in fact, I was outreaching just the other morning here on Gulch Street rather, in San Pedro. And we've had to have some rules. Otherwise, we'll continue to see lawlessness and chaos. When you give folks a choice, they have to make a choice by a certain date. And I've been a police officer for many years, and I've connected people to resources and housing when I was working the streets of Los Angeles, even in my own community. Arrest is the last option. Citations are a last option. However, it needs to be on the table. I've always feel that you need to have uniform presence coupled with the outreach workers. I've said that 5 years ago, and my colleagues didn't agree with me. And sure enough, look at our streets today. You have to have rules and consequences. And if they do refuse, because oftentimes they do, choices need to be made. If a bed's available, you go into that bed. If you refuse to go into the bed, then let's get you into a drug addiction rehab program. If you're suffering from mental illness, let's get you into a mental health bed. And if you continue to refuse, this sidewalk or underpass should not be an option. And yes, that citation or arrest has to be on the table. But we found that we haven't had to arrest anyone, knowing that we give folks choices and a safer place to go into.
Just one quick question about this ballot measure. Why are you putting forth this ballot measure when the kind of set of provisions that it incorporates would presumably be provisions that you would try and implement were you to become mayor? Why do we need the ballot measure?
Yeah, because it's, if as you mentioned earlier, Frances, the governance structure of Los Angeles, you have found, you have a strong
weak mayor,
strong council. And I want to give the option to the people, the voters of Los Angeles. Now, with the recent LA Alliance settlement, they agreed with me that we have to advance on emergency shelter now. But what it doesn't do is offer a citywide no camping law. And it doesn't hold elected officials accountable for not meeting certain benchmarks. So my ballot measure, we've had to now pivot because the language is now outdated because of the LA Alliance settlement with the city of Los Angeles. But we have to redo the language that will call for the dock and pay of elected officials, and will call for a citywide no camping law when, as I mentioned earlier, when a bed is available, there will be consequences for those who don't take it. And this is what, I've actually begged my colleagues years ago to do. We have a weak watered down no camping law, to the point where, of course, we're the epicenter of the homeless situation in LA County, because the other 87 cities have no camping laws on the books. And so what happens is those who refuse help or refuse to make a choice go into the city limits. And I can tell you, I can testify that we have welcomed, unfortunately, the push of neighboring cities into my district. So we have said yes to solutions, and this is why we cannot allow the repopulation of encampments, because we owe it to everyone, the neighborhoods, the businesses, and the most vulnerable. And my goal is to shut down the drug dealers who are penetrating into these encampments, who are providing this dangerous meth that can cost today $2 to $5 a hit, and that's causing all this paranoia and destroying these souls on our streets.
So I think it's fairly well, I guess, agreed upon these days that the main way to solve homelessness is through building housing, the sort of the housing first position. Is that your position, or is yours kind of enforcement first?
Well, no, absolutely not. Enforcement is the last option. I'm being tagged by these so-called activists that are saying, I want to arrest homeless people. It's far from the truth. When we talk about housing first, what does that mean? Is it an apartment building? Is it an apartment unit? We cannot wait for an apartment unit that costs or that takes 2 to 4 years to build in the city. For me as mayor, we're going to offer several shelter options first. And I always believe that when you offer a shelter option, that begins the journey a journey of permanent housing. Now, I don't believe at this moment that we can promise someone who's living outside in our sidewalks a home from the street. And we're at a point where we have to advance, and this is where the settlement comes into play, because they agreed with me. We have to add emergency housing now while we're building out supportive housing. And let's be honest with this. We have to say that this issue of homelessness is not only a housing problem, it's a drug addiction, mental health problem. This is why we are compelling and demanding the county to do their part. When they're short 1,500 mental health beds, they're doing a disservice to everyone.
It is. And one of your rivals, said the same thing when we had a discussion a couple of weeks back. But any of us, I've been in LA for 30 years, and many of you, I'm sure, longer than that. And there's definitely been, there's been drug and mental health issues going back decades, but the problem seems to have increased exponentially right now in terms of the numbers of people unhoused. And that does get back, I guess, to the issue of building housing. And okay, so HHH gets passed, and yet you're referring to the length of time it takes to get an apartment built, and there's numbers going around about how much that apartment can cost. Sometimes 400,000 to 500,000 for a studio, and needless to say, the voters are pretty kind of shocked by this. Like, is that how our money being spent wisely? So affordable housing is proving rather unaffordable to build. What are the fixes? I mean, is it somehow figuring out how to bring down the costs of construction and materials and labor? Is it clearing red tape at the city? Is it something else?
All of the above, Frances. And this is another reason why I'm running for mayor. When we, going at this as a first responder, number one, I can't fathom the fact that the emergency operations center is not activated. We need to address this problem 24/7. I've called on a state of emergency years ago. If you go to the Daily News, you can look at my op-ed piece. I'm trying to get the governor at the time to call for a state of emergency. Here locally, as mayor, first actions to activate the emergency operations center, so we have everyone in the same room, marching toward a goal of advancing on all types of housing, including temporary shelter, permanent housing. And if you look at the amount it takes to get the housing off online is very frustrating. And it takes the executive, it takes a leader with a bold leader that will bring these impacted departments together. I'll be developing a department services unit that will be accompanied by an open data portal that shows the development, the progress of each development online, real time. If you can order a package on Amazon and track your package, why in the heck can we not track the developments that are taking place in the city of Los Angeles? And in that open data portal, we will provide red flags alerts to those departments that are holding the project back. And that's the accountability that's been missing. And that's the accountability that I'm going to be moving on. Again, lastly, I'll share with you what we've done in my district, not talked about these plans and made promises. We have updated our community plan in San Pedro. We're doing the same as we speak in Wilmington and Harbor City, to the point where in San Pedro, we have thousands of units already built or already in the process of being built, all by right at all income levels, including supportive housing. So we're proud of that leadership here in my district, and we're going to take that citywide.
What we've just been talking about is pretty much ground up housing, new build. What about other ways to achieve housing? There's a whole sort of basket of approaches that are out there. And if I just enumerate a few of them, creating stronger tenant protections, preserving existing affordable housing, not letting the luxury developers come in and mow it down, adaptive reuse of existing buildings, or using alternative systems like prefab, which have implications, I guess, for the labor that gets to build those structures. Which of those are you in favor of, and would figure out ways to support, including rent protections?
Sure. I mean, we can't add to the homelessness crisis. I'm always supportive of rent protections, the fact that, what we've done in my district, again, we've said yes to all housing elements. And what we've also recognized the fact that every community in the city needs to accommodate housing. Every municipality needs to accommodate housing. And for me, whether it's, in my block where I live, there's an ADU 2 doors down. On my dad's street, there are fourplexes, adaptable reuse that they're being proposed right now at the Topaz building in San Pedro, coupled with the fact that you have inclusionary zoning, that something that I support. And as of right now, as you may know, we're studying that to be permanent here in the city of Los Angeles, to add inclusionary zoning to be a part of the transit-oriented development that's taking place. And so, a citywide inclusionary zoning could definitely be helpful to ensure that we have affordable housing. Rent's too damn expensive. And I'm thinking of my son, who's in Chicago. I want him to come back home and rent and have an affordable place to live.
I feel for your son. It's very unaffordable. And I guess one of the other strategies that is often proposed, particularly within the building and planning community, to unleash more housing, is to upzone. And the most recent effort to upzone in our state is SB 9 and 10. And you weren't in favor of SB 9 and 10. And San Pedro, lovely, lovely place, but full of single family houses. Why your resistance to upzoning?
It's, I've always felt that we upzone along transit lines. I've seen that. I've moved my son in Chicago. He doesn't need a car today because he takes a metro. Here in the city, I'm supportive of keeping the character of neighborhoods, but also in support of putting ADUs where it makes sense, like the one down the street from my house, or supporting housing, upzoning where it makes sense, going at this in a balanced approach. And we're already seeing that in the city of Los Angeles, and hopeful that even with this RENA number that's now law, that our neighboring cities do the same, so that we add more supply to address the demand issues here in our region.
I mentioned very briefly prefab and modular construction, and increasingly one's encountering developers, builders who are looking to use that form of construction to get housing up cheaply. And one of the reasons why they're doing it is because they can circumvent union labor doing that. And yet I think many people would agree in principle with fair wage, and you yourself have support from a number of the trades unions. So what do you feel about that as a strategy to enabling faster, more affordable housing?
Well, it's a balance. There's one project happening today that's prefab across the street from my bridge home, 100 units there. And I feel a case by case basis. We have learned in partnership with Gensler and the Carpenters Union. They have an incredible model to follow. We just need we need leaders in the city to advance their urban awnings project that I support. So we can have both. It's not the end all, but I've always said it's case by case basis, and it's important to have that balance to advance on larger scale projects that we support project labor agreements, but the smaller scale projects, we got to move quickly on them and make sure they're affordable as well.
You just mentioned awnings, street awnings, which brings me back to a softer question relating to architects and kind of visions for the street. So I know that one of your early projects, in fact, I think I met you when you were unveiling the Great Streets project down in San Pedro. So Great Streets is something that Mayor Garcetti tried to make a sort of trademark of his tenure. And Great Streets definitely, as designers and planners see it, means shade trees and safe streets and more greenery, and it means an environment where people feel comfortable going out and using mass transit. And I bring all this up because your background is as a police officer, but what extent, and there are questions right now about public safety, to what extent can sort of better streets, safer streets, lovely parks, what role can they play in making our Los Angeles safer and also more beautiful?
It plays a critical role. And this is why in these last 10 years as a council member representing Watts down to San Pedro, we've advanced on planting thousands of trees. We've advanced on adding major improvements to major corridors. We just opened at the Triangle Park at the exit of the 110 freeway, where today we have a bioswale. We've installed bioswale there, and we have gardening classes. And when I was hooked when Mayor Garcetti initiated his Great Streets project, we were one of the first to say yes on the Gaffey Street corridor, making sure that it's pedestrian safe, and we've added elements to and added lights and tri-lights so that our students, half of the students cross Gaffey to go into our local elementary, middle school, and high schools. But it also ensure that we have clean and safe sidewalks and parks. But I'm really concerned about the future of public transportation here. I'm calling for free public transportation, but if people don't feel safe on public transportation is worthless. Adding back to the parks, we've nearly $170 million in parks improvements in my district. What we've done here in the downtown San Pedro area, created this commercial zone. We've extended the Silver Line to the downtown San Pedro area to capitalize on TOC. So we've done it all. We've got to do more throughout the city, and I have the experience. I've allocated the dollars. I've advanced and initiated these types of projects, and I'll take that citywide.
But then when you do take it citywide, I guess you come up against the the ongoing challenge that LA mayors face, which is all those departments and commissions that they have to deal with and try and wrestle into actually getting
That's
stuff
the beauty
done.
of being a mayor.
so
You can
for
make those
example,
appointments.
so the trees, okay, the trees. Recently, there was installed a new position, an urban chief of urban forestry, or a title, something like that. But does that chief of urban forestry have any teeth? You know, what sort of, how can you actually turn these you know, great sounding intentions into the reality when the structure of Los Angeles, there's so many departments, there's so much duplication, there's so many committee heads and commissions. How are you going to streamline getting stuff done, like planting trees?
Well, it starts at the top. It starts with the executive, and it starts with those who you surround yourself with, from your general manager all down to your commissioners, going in and having the experience of working in the LAPD. You respect the line of communication, the line of command, and that's something that we've missed in this city, where and I will, you know, based on my experience and how we've been successful in leading a number of efforts. And this is why we have been very productive in these last 10 years and moving on critical projects, because you get people in the room, you give them the marching orders, and you hold people accountable. As it relates to, I'd love to talk about, you know, the tree planting issue, and what I've initiated when I was the committee chair of the Public Works. I learned a great deal about the healthy urban forests. In fact, I initiated a motion that was supported, where the Bureau of Street Services, now Streets LA, are called, develop and implement policies to greatly reduce the number of trees removed as part of the program. So I insisted that when a tree is removed, the second tree required for the 2-for-1 replacement, that the second tree gets planted in neighborhoods that has a low tree canopy cover. So I'm really proud of that effort. But it starts with the leader, and it starts with the executive of the city, and this is why I'm running.
A couple more questions, and then we're going to open the floor to your audience. So certainly the design community is very concerned with climate change and being a participant in solving climate change through all sorts of design innovations that they're all busy working on. But what about you, and sort of how are you going to show, well, what is your level of commitment, I guess, to trying to alleviate climate change? If you're elected to be our next mayor, for example, will you move the city of LA to adopt the 2022 Zero Code for California?
Absolutely. But let me recognize architects in the city of Los Angeles. I often feel that they really have not had a seat at the table. And I come at this, you know, I'm a little bit more biased on the work that you do, because, you know, my wife has this incredible eye of design and placement. And my son, thank God he doesn't take after me, takes after his mom. And I've seen him evolve as an 18-year-old, and just loves the work that you do. So my commitment to you as mayor is to make sure you hold and are involved and pointed to positions of leadership, to offer your skills, your knowledge, and your abilities to build out the city. So the answer, of course, is yes. Be able to adopt a phase 0 code. I'm going to guess that all of my opponents agree, but I believe the phased approach to keep housing is important, so that we can keep housing affordable. Today, there are large sources of emissions that 82% of the emissions account for mobile sources, contributing to CO2, methane, NOx into our basin. I have served on the AQMD for many years and advanced, and as chair of the technology committee, nearly $1 billion of green technology to help lower emissions. But, you know, we have to aggressively act to reduce emissions from mobile sources at our ports and airports, something that I've supported the zero emissions port by 2035. But we have to ensure that we expand these programs for residents to replace old and gasoline vehicles with hybrids and electric vehicles. Of course, the trucks are a major emitter that come in and out of our port complex. And you know, I have seen, being a kid of the Port of LA, seeing the amazing improvements of 80% reduction of NOx and SOx here. I've seen, looking to the north, was once the refineries that were pluming black smoke. Now today you see steam come out. A lot of work that's been done, but yet we won't settle. So I'll lead on climate change. If you go to my website, joe4la.com, you'll see my plan. You know, when I first decided to run for mayor, we sat at the kitchen table, you know, and my wife and my daughter and my son, and my daughter turns to me, and 15 years old, she says, "Dad, if you run for mayor, you have to make climate change, elevate the issue of climate change," because she was concerned about her future in LA.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that generation is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. I'm going to throw it open to anyone that has questions. Do we have how are we indicating questioners, Will?
Thank you, Frances, and thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, if anyone has questions, please add them to the chat.
Oh, there we go. Harva. Sorry, I can see the hand now. I couldn't see the hand.
Excellent. Thank you.
Harva Danielson.
I only just put my hand up. No, you can always count on me to chime in.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for coming tonight, honestly. You know, my question is, it's a little, I'll try to focus in here, because obviously all of these problems you're talking about are all intertwined. You can't just, you know, solve one thing all by itself. It doesn't work that way. If it worked that way, if it were easy, it would have been done, right? But you know, it seems to me that we've dug ourselves a hole. We've for decades not built enough housing. For decades, we haven't known how to solve mental health problems and homelessness problems. And so our hole, you know, we can't just proceed as usual. We have to dig ourselves out of this hole, and we also have to live differently as a city, right? You know,
Yep.
We are going to have to densify our boulevards. We are going to have to do something about you know, get people out of their cars, make it more inconvenient to drive cars, combined with better transit, blah, blah, blah. There's just a lot of things we're going to need to do, since not everybody on the street is unable to function in society. There's lots of people on the street who are perfectly able to function in society if they had a chance, but it doesn't pencil out, right? The job they have, the distance they have to travel, it just doesn't pencil out. And so that's really the crux of my question, you know. And so I just got off this statewide meeting where we were talking about a bill. You know, it's yet another bill where we're asking the state to impose something on local jurisdictions, because the local jurisdictions aren't changing and moving fast enough, because it's politically toxic, right? The public people don't want the change that kind of needs to happen to get us where we need to be. And so that's kind of my question. What do we do? How do we get it done when there is, you know, short of taking the time to convince each voter that we really do need to live differently, and we really do need to accept, you know, like, how in our jurisdiction do we actually make this kind of change?
It's understand the question. I mean, on the city side, as far as local governance, it's going to take a cultural change, and it starts with the chief executive officer. You know, if you look at the position of mayor and all those points that you raised, improvement of quality of life, from transportation to housing to crime to environment, it needs the city, in which I've seen, I've had a front row seat. This is why I'm running for mayor. I'm tired of studies. I'm tired of committee reports. I'm tired of report backs. The city needs a leader, a mayor that will appoint general managers and commissioners that will march the same location as it relates to prioritizing the improvement of our quality of life, period. And surrounding myself with folks who are the professionals, not making political appointments of that feel good, but bringing in experts like yourself, as I mentioned earlier, to welcome you in City Hall and help change that direction, help make that cultural change that this city needs and deserves.
It's a tough one, because I read that when I guess there were efforts to take a lane away from a road in San Pedro, it was like instantly 200 people voted against it. That happens all over the region, and that seems to be emblematic of the problem.
And if I can, Frances, I mean, we said yes to that, and I still get pushback at my nephew's 4-year birthday party on Sunday. But I also got pushback of advancing quickly and citing locations to put emergency shelter. And I knew that it was a right thing to do. We can't wait for polls. We can't wait for focus groups to tell us what's the right thing to do. And if you go to my district today, I promised my residents, my businesses, and kept to my promise that if we move and help the most vulnerable, get them off the sidewalks, we will provide safe, clean, and healthy neighborhoods. And that's the leadership that I provided. We didn't see that in other parts of the city. This is why I'm running for mayor, because I have that ground level experience that my opponents don't have.
Question from Rick Corsini and then Daniel Gaiman. Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Hi, how are you, Joe?
Are we cousins with that last name? I'm sure.
We're probably we probably have at least an aunt or common, right?
I'm sure. I don't know. I think Rick and I may be cousins. My uncle told me that my grandfather's mom was a Caruso, so I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness. You're running against your cousin. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that could be possible.
That's amazing. Well, it's very strange, but hate to admit this, but my high school principal was Rick Caruso's uncle.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is very odd.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's another story. But my question to you is really kind of a bit more maybe in the weeds than Hava's, but along the same lines. You and the city council in November approved a very profound document that was authored by the city planning department, the current housing elements. That is really it's a truly progressive and well thought through and forward looking document as a game plan and a blueprint for getting us out of the housing crisis that we're in, all by over 8-10 years. It's definitely one of the best documents that I've ever seen out of the city planning department. So if we're talking about a guide, a way to get us out of the situation they're in, you've really got a great blueprint already.
Yeah,
the big issue, at least in my mind, how do we implement it?
Right,
the big thing that you're facing, and anybody, the next mayor or the next city council, don't make it this time, whatever it is, our leadership is going to face getting this through and implementing it. It's a very progressive document. It's doing exactly the right thing. It's focusing new density in high opportunity areas of the city, which is what really needs to happen to deal with our social equity problem and with our transit problems, et cetera, et cetera. It's the right thing to do. The issue that you and your colleagues are going to face is, how do we sell this in all the communities that need to be updating their community plans and getting this through the NIMBY groups in Encino and everywhere else in the city that are going to be fighting tooth and nail against doing the right thing?
Well, I saw what was coming in 10 years when I first got elected to the seat. The importance of what I've learned from our neighbors in Long Beach, the importance of having by right projects and not have projects get stuck in litigation or CEQA law. And this is why we've been successful in my district, particularly in the downtown San Pedro area. We're seeing thousands of units being built today because they're all by right. Every community in the city has to accommodate housing, period. Whether, as I mentioned earlier, it's more ADUs, infill projects with duplexes or fourplexes. We know the controller reported that the city of LA owns 14,000 properties and lots. We, as mayor, we will build on those lots. We will, in regional centers, we will build high rises. In commercial centers, we will build the adequate housing that's needed. But it also takes a leader with the spine that holds people accountable for holding up these projects. As I mentioned earlier, we have to have accountability to the point where, I'm going to put together the development services unit, drawing from all of the land development departments, planning, engineering, building and safety, DWP, the fire department. These reviewing staff will be unified under one command, and there will be an accountable chain of command. And I mentioned earlier, we will track down each project so that we streamline these projects and hold those departments accountable for not moving. I was told that, again, referencing Amazon, that there's a stop button that they push, a virtual stop button. They get alerted when something's tied up. And that's the technology that I'm going to bring as mayor to ensure we move quickly on the project, but also update our community plans and push back against the NIMBYism. Because everyone needs to do their part from Silmar all the way down to San Pedro.
So just a quick follow up on that. Joe, I think that having kind of a central building services group is a good idea. One of the things that is concerning, however, is that the enormity of the task before us. It's both mandated by the state and described in detail in the housing element. Is we're talking about building 50,000 housing units a year for the next 8 years. We've never built more than about 20,000 ever in the city, and that was only a couple of years ago. And last year it was 18,000. How do you see increasing the number of building permits that are issued from 18,000 to 50,000 that year?
Again, it starts with the leader. It starts with holding the general managers of those impacted departments, including the building and safety department, accountable for processing. And you know what? I'm done with this. Still paperwork. We still have to go to the counter. By the way, counters are still closed due to quote unquote COVID. I introduced a motion yesterday to reopen our counters. Why can't you submit your project online? Come on, we have to get up with the 21st century here and keep up with it. And these archaic services are just not helping anyone. And again, it starts with the mayor and with the the stroke of the pen with executive orders. And that's going to be the mayor that I will be for the city. Again, leading with urgency, coming at this as if I'm responding to a 911 call.
And we're going to throw to Daniel Gaiman momentarily, but I will just say that in your ballot measure, you say you're going to reduce the salary of the mayor, city attorney, and city council members if these goals aren't reached. So you're going to reduce your own salary. Absolutely. So if we're missing the mark on homeless housing or emergency shelters by 20%, we will dock the pay by 20%. And I got that idea from the state legislature that when the state doesn't approve their budget, they get dock pay. So again, that's that accountability piece I'm going to bring to it. The voters would like that one. Daniel Gaiman.
Thanks, Frances. It's Hello, council member.
Hey, Daniel.
I'm generally in support and virtually enthused by lots of your ideas about lots of things, particularly homelessness. And so I have it's kind of a salt and pepper question. The easy one is, do you support the state of California seeking an exclusion from the IMD requirement that prohibits caregivers from taking seriously mentally ill patients off the street and placing them in an institution that has 16 or more residents? So that's number one.
Yeah, I was on record in supporting that. I think the reason why we have a mental health crisis is because Medicare has failed these folks. And I've been on record in supporting it, asking the federal government, the state government to move and increase the IMD.
Okay, so that was the easy part. Difficult part is I am concerned about the relationship between affordable and permanent transitional housing providers and unions. And I think that among the things that drive up the cost of producing an affordable housing unit are both that everybody has to lawyer up in the situation and to make sure they're fulfilling all state, federal, et cetera, requirements. And that's what pushes the cost of these affordable units to 600, 700,000. My one drawback in terms of being a unfettered, passionate supporter of you would be your relationship to the unions. Can you talk through that for me?
Well, we have a humanitarian crisis. When you talk about the unions, it's, the longshoremen, the cops, the electricians, the Teamsters, the operating engineers. They've got my support, but and they're supporting me. But we have advanced on critical housing projects. Yes, some have been labor supported and others have not. And it just all depends on the scale and scope of each project. And I'll be the mayor that's going to lead not only with urgency, but also with balance. It's good to have that relationship with the union. And unions, especially what I've learned with trades, there's a project happening in downtown San Pedro right now, the courthouse site. It's being funded by pension dollars and being built by trades. So that's a win-win there. You got a project that's being funded by their pension dollars, and at the same time, those who are building the mixed income project are union members.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Will Wright, I know you have a question.
Yes. So this might be our last question for you, Councilmember. And
Sure.
If anyone else has any additional questions, we'll be wrapping up a little early, and we really appreciate your time. But mine really is maybe a little bit of a follow-up to what Daniel was asking about with regards to the leadership of the mayor. Right before Garcetti, Mayor Villaraigosa worked out an initiative called 12 to 2. And it was really about development services, consolidating the decision-making from the 12 departments that currently have to, receive clearances to 2. And I know that's a very ambitious opportunity, and that's probably why Mayor Garcetti decided to not wrestle with that alligator. However, right now, the feedback that I'm getting from all the architects out there is that the number one obstacle of delivering housing more expeditiously happens to be LADWP. And through the process that you as the mayor will have to, sort of reform the culture, do you have ideas on whether or not you would bring back something such as the 12 to 2 initiative, which really helps streamline those clearances, or like who are you going to put in charge so that housing is built much more quickly?
Oftentimes, that's whether it's a local brewery getting built out right now in downtown San Pedro, or a housing project that has to hook up. It's DWP. Well, let me just say this. As mayor, City Hall will be the house of yes. We will start, and exactly how I've led these last 10 years, with the answer is yes. How do we get there? And let's get there. instead of, well, let's look at this. Let's bring everyone to the table. That's not how I've led. That's not how I will lead. Love Marty Adams. I love his sense of urgency as well. And we have a great working relationship. But I'm going to be the hands-on mayor. I'll tell you right now, this is where, we have that department, that development services unit that I will be engaged and active in. And that is the beauty of how I've led and the beauty of leadership, but also not only holding my general managers and departments accountable, but holding myself accountable. As a council member, oftentimes, it's not my role to pick up the phone and call general managers, but I still do it. In fact, I was on the call today with Osama from the building and safety department because the optometrist down the street wants to move on her project that's been sitting on it for 6 months. 6 months. That is not how I'm going to operate. And that's not how the city should operate.
Well, a lot of this will depend on the budget. So I really appreciate your leadership on that. And I know that we're in budget season right now, and Osama's personally asked to hire 10 additional architects into the operating budget for the department so they can administer the new zoning code. So we hope you support that.
Yes.
But with that, I really want to respect your time, and I want to make sure that we have a chance from Mitra and from Frances to sort of close this out with any closing remarks they might have. So, thank you.
Well, I guess one closing remark, again, touching on what architects were interested in, is we have the 2028 Olympics coming to LA. Are you going to get the homelessness crisis dealt with by then? And how are you going to? What are you going to sort of offer to the world as they come to Los Angeles?
My vision when we welcome the world, Frances, in 2028, we will have eliminated street camping in the city of Los Angeles. We will have safe, clean, and passable sidewalks. We will have a city that's equitable, a city that's safe, a city that welcomes the world. I have, and what we won't have a city that what we did during Super Bowl is clean up an underpass because, the Super Bowl folks are coming. That's not going to be, we will end chronic homelessness in the city of Los Angeles sooner than 2028. You have my commitment. Today, people are afraid of visiting us. And it's an embarrassment. And this is another reason why I'm running. When you have high crime rates, everything hinges on public safety. People don't feel safe. They're not going to live here, do business here, work here, design here. So that's going to change under my watch as mayor.
Well, it's great to talk to you, Councilman, and I should hand it off to Mitra to.
Thanks, Frances.
Really
Thank you so much for this great conversation. Really appreciate getting to know you better. And one of the things I caught from this conversation is the value you have for architects and the work that we bring. And I really appreciate that. And, as AIALA members, we're here to support our city.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, gotta guess.
He's like a baby. He's starting to cry. My lap. Go ahead.
Nice.
I'm sorry, Mitra.
No worries. But I just wanted to reinstate that we're here to support the initiatives that are taking place in LA, and we love to bring our expertise, our knowledge to making this city continue to be a great place for all of us to live.
Well, you have my commitment. And not only that, you're going to see in my appointments, you're going to see architects appointed to key commissions. I'm talking about, the skill set. I've learned in the police academy, SMEs, subject matter experts. We need you. We need your knowledge to serve on key commissions in key departments. And you have my commitment moving forward. Very similar to what I've said with the police commission, Department of Building Safety, the port, the airport. We need experts to sit on those commissions and not political appointees, because they're buddies and friends because, you know, you supported me, you voted for me, I'm going to give you this position. So that's not going to happen. And we need you more than ever as we build out the city.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you.